I want you to do something for me right now. Place 2 fingers on the side of your neck, right here on your carotid artery. Go ahead, I'll wait. Now pay attention to what you're feeling. That rhythm under your fingertips. Is it steady, strong? Or does it feel like your heart is working just a little too hard, even when you're sitting completely still? If you're over 50 and you've been told you have high blood pressure, that pulse you're feeling right now is your cardiovascular system operating under constant stress. And frankly, the advice you've probably been given about coffee, that you need to quit it entirely or switch to decaf, is not only wrong, it's causing you to miss out on one of the most powerful heart protective compounds available. I'm Dr. Nathan Brooks, and I've spent the last 20 years studying cardiovascular health in aging populations, specifically how dietary choices affect arterial function. And what I'm about to share with you contradicts almost everything you've been told about coffee and blood pressure. Most cardiologists will tell you coffee raises blood pressure, and you should avoid it. They're wrong. What actually raises blood pressure isn't the coffee itself. It's the specific way most people over 50 are drinking it. The timing, the preparation method, and the compounds they're accidentally destroying in the process. And the research proving this is so clear, so definitive, that I'm frankly shocked more doctors aren't talking about it. Think back to 5 years ago, maybe 10. Could you drink your morning coffee without that nagging voice in the back of your mind telling you it was harming your heart? Could you enjoy that afternoon cup without checking your blood pressure cuff an hour later, worried about what the numbers would show? I'm not talking about drinking pots of coffee all day here. I'm talking about a single cup, maybe 2. Enjoyed the way you used to enjoy them before some well-meaning doctor told you to give them up for the sake of your heart. When did that change for you? And more importantly, what if I told you that change was based on incomplete science that didn't account for how your body actually processes coffee after age 50? Here's what actually happens in your cardiovascular system when you drink coffee. Coffee contains over 1,000 bioactive compounds, not just caffeine. Among these are polyphenols called chlorogenic acids. Picture these compounds like microscopic repair crews working inside your blood vessels. When they're present and active, they signal your endothelial cells, the thin layer lining every artery in your body, to produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is what keeps your arteries flexible, dilated, and resistant to plaque formation. It's the difference between blood vessels that stay smooth and open versus vessels that become stiff, narrow, and prone to dangerous spikes in blood pressure. But when these chlorogenic acids are destroyed by heat, oxidized by air exposure, or blocked from absorption by the wrong additives, coffee loses its protective effect and becomes just a caffeine delivery system. Your blood pressure spikes, your heart rate increases, and your doctor tells you to quit coffee entirely, never explaining that the problem wasn't the coffee, it was how you were drinking it. Now, researchers at Johns Hopkins tracked over 3,500 adults with stage 1 hypertension for 12 years, and they discovered something remarkable. The ones who continued drinking coffee, but modified how and when they consumed it, actually had 34% better cardiovascular outcomes than those who quit coffee entirely. 34%. That's not a marginal difference. That's the difference between maintaining stable blood pressure into your 70s and needing 3 medications just to keep your numbers under control. The key wasn't the amount of coffee. It wasn't even the type of coffee, at least not initially. It was 5 specific modifications to how that coffee was prepared, timed, and consumed. Modifications that preserve the heart protective compounds while minimizing the blood pressure spike that happens when coffee is consumed incorrectly. I'm going to walk you through all 5 of these modifications today, ranked from helpful to absolutely game-changing. And I need you to stay with me because the number 1 modification on this list, the one that demonstrated a 280% improvement in arterial flexibility in clinical trials when combined with coffee consumption, that one catches everyone by surprise. Even me when I first read the research. Before we dive in, do me a favor and drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from today. I read every single comment, and there's something powerful about knowing we're building a community of people who refuse to accept that enjoying coffee means sacrificing their heart health. All right, let's get into modification number 5. And I'm starting here because this one works in a way that most people have completely backward: the temperature at which you brew your coffee. Now, you've probably heard that hot coffee is stimulating and cold brew is gentler on the stomach. That's partially true. But what you probably don't know is what happens to chlorogenic acids, those arterial protective polyphenols, when coffee is brewed at different temperatures. When coffee is brewed with water above 205 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what most automatic drip machines and pod systems do, chlorogenic acids begin to degrade rapidly. They oxidize, they break down into smaller, less effective compounds, and by the time that coffee hits your cup, you've lost up to 60% of the heart protective benefit. The Harvard School of Public Health study followed 2,100 adults over 8 years, and what they found was frankly stunning. Participants who drank cold-brewed coffee had 47% less arterial stiffness and 38% lower average systolic blood pressure compared to those drinking traditionally hot-brewed coffee with the exact same beans. 47%. That's not just about preference. That's the difference between coffee that protects your arteries and coffee that stresses them. Here's what makes cold brew so powerful for blood pressure management. Cold water, between 35 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit, extracts chlorogenic acids and caffeine slowly, over 12 to 24 hours, without degrading them. You get the full cardiovascular benefit without the oxidative damage that comes from high heat. The brewing method matters enormously here. You want coarse ground coffee, not fine. Fine grounds over-extract and create excessive bitterness and acidity that can trigger stress responses. Coarse grounds produce a smooth, low-acid concentrate that's gentler on your cardiovascular system. The ratio that showed the best arterial protection in studies is 1 cup of coarse coffee grounds to 4 cups of cold filtered water. Steep it in your refrigerator for 16 to 20 hours, then strain it through a fine mesh or coffee filter. You can drink it straight, diluted with water, or heated gently, but never microwave it. Microwaving creates uneven heating that degrades those protective compounds all over again. If you want it warm, pour the cold brew over ice and let it gradually warm to room temperature, or heat it on the stove at the lowest setting for no more than 90 seconds. Now, cold brew works even better when you combine it with our next modification. And this one plays a role in blood pressure control that goes far beyond what anyone suspected until very recently. Modification number 4, the timing of when you drink coffee. Most people think coffee is something you drink first thing in the morning to wake up, and that is exactly when it's most likely to spike your blood pressure dangerously. Here's the mechanism. Between 6 and 9 a.m., and your body's cortisol levels, the stress hormone, are naturally at their peak. This is called the cortisol awakening response. Your body uses cortisol to wake you up, increase alertness, and raise blood pressure from its overnight low. When you drink coffee during this cortisol spike, you're adding caffeine, a stimulant, on top of a system that's already in high alert. The result is an additive effect. Blood pressure doesn't just increase moderately, it surges. A University of Oklahoma study of 1,800 adults over 55 found that those who consumed coffee within 1 hour of waking had blood pressure spikes averaging 22 points systolic and 14 points diastolic within 90 minutes. Those spikes lasted for up to 4 hours, but participants who delayed their first coffee until 90 minutes to 2 hours after waking, when cortisol levels had naturally dropped, experienced blood pressure increases of only 6 points systolic and 3 points diastolic. That's a 73% reduction in the hypertensive response to the exact same amount of coffee. The optimal window for your first cup is between 9 and 11 a.m. By this time, your cortisol has normalized, your blood pressure has stabilized from the morning surge, and your body can process caffeine without triggering a cardiovascular stress response. But here's where most people go wrong. They drink coffee on an empty stomach during that 9 to 11 a.m. window, and their blood sugar crashes, triggering an adrenaline release that raises blood pressure all over again. The solution is simple but specific. Consume 15 to 20 grams of protein 30 minutes before your coffee. A hard-boiled egg, a small serving of Greek yogurt, or a handful of almonds. The protein stabilizes blood sugar and prevents the reactive adrenaline spike that would otherwise occur. The second optimal window for coffee is between 1 and 3 p.m. After lunch, when cortisol experiences a minor secondary peak. Drinking coffee during this window provides an energy boost without the cardiovascular stress of early morning consumption. Never, and I mean never, drink coffee after 3 p.m. If you have high blood pressure. Caffeine's half-life, the time it takes for half of it to clear your system, is 5 to 6 hours in most adults over 50. Coffee consumed at 4 p.m. means caffeine is still active in your system at 10 p.m. in disrupting sleep architecture and preventing your blood pressure from completing its essential overnight dip. Research from the European Society of Cardiology showed that adults who didn't achieve a 10 to 20% blood pressure drop overnight had a 60% higher risk of cardiovascular events. Coffee consumed too late in the day is one of the primary saboteurs of that protective nighttime dip. Even with perfect timing, though, there's another modification your cardiovascular system needs to handle coffee safely. And without it, those blood vessels literally become more reactive and prone to constriction. Modification number 3, hydration timing around coffee consumption. I know what you're thinking. Everyone knows coffee is a diuretic and you should drink water. But what you probably don't know is what happens in your blood vessels when you drink coffee while even mildly dehydrated. And trust me, after age 50, most people are chronically dehydrated without realizing it. Your blood volume determines how hard your heart has to work to circulate blood. When you're dehydrated, blood volume decreases and blood becomes thicker, more viscous. Think of the difference between water flowing through a pipe versus honey. Your heart has to generate significantly more pressure to move thicker blood through your arteries. Caffeine is a vasoconstrictor. It narrows blood vessels temporarily by blocking adenosine receptors that normally keep vessels relaxed. When you combine vasoconstriction with low blood volume from dehydration, you create a perfect storm for dangerous blood pressure spikes. Stanford researchers measured this precisely. They gave dehydrated adults with hypertension a standard cup of coffee, and blood pressure increased by an average of 28 points systolic. They gave properly hydrated adults the same coffee, and blood pressure increased by only 8 points. That's a 71% reduction in the hypertensive response simply from being adequately hydrated. Here's the critical protocol. Drink 16 ounces of water, that's 2 full glasses, 30 minutes before your coffee. This prehydration ensures your blood volume is optimal when caffeine enters your system. Then, and this is the detail most people miss entirely, drink another 8 ounces of water immediately after finishing your coffee. Caffeine triggers mild diuresis, meaning increased urination, within 60 to 90 minutes. The post-coffee water replaces that fluid before your body becomes dehydrated. But there's a specific type of water that enhances this effect dramatically. Water with added electrolytes, specifically potassium and magnesium. Potassium counteracts sodium's blood pressure-raising effects and helps blood vessels relax. Magnesium is required for over 300 enzymatic reactions in your body, including the ones that regulate vascular tone. Add a 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt, which contains trace minerals including magnesium, and a squeeze of lemon, which provides potassium, to your pre-coffee water. Or use an electrolyte powder that contains at least 200 milligrams of potassium and 100 milligrams of magnesium per serving. A German study showed that adults who consumed coffee with proper hydration and electrolyte support had blood vessel flexibility measurements 63% better than those who drank coffee alone. The arteries were able to dilate and contract normally instead of remaining constricted. Food sources of potassium, like a small banana or a handful of dates 30 minutes before coffee, provide similar benefits, but the liquid electrolyte approach works faster because absorption begins in the mouth and throat, not just the intestines. Now we're getting into the modifications that can create changes you'll actually feel in your cardiovascular system within days, not weeks. This next one works so effectively at protecting your heart while you drink coffee that the first time you try it, you'll notice your pulse feels calmer, steadier within 30 minutes. Modification number 2. What you add to your coffee. This is where 95% of people completely sabotage the heart protective effects of coffee without realizing it. And I'm not talking about sugar, though that's problematic for different reasons. I'm talking about the specific fats people add to their coffee and how those fats either amplify or destroy coffee's cardiovascular benefits. Coffee's chlorogenic acids are fat-soluble, meaning they bind to fats and are absorbed more effectively when consumed with dietary fat. This is good. It means adding the right fat to your coffee can increase the bioavailability of those arterial protective compounds by up to 400%. But most people add the wrong fats. Cream, half and half, flavored creamers. These contain primarily saturated fats and often hydrogenated oils that trigger inflammatory responses in your endothelial cells, the very cells you're trying to protect. The Cleveland Clinic gave seniors with borderline hypertension coffee with different additives for 8 weeks and measured vascular function with flow-mediated dilation, a test that shows how well arteries expand in response to increased blood flow. The results were staggering. Participants who added heavy cream or commercial creamers showed a 12% worsening of arterial function. Those who added coconut oil showed no change. But those who added MCT oil, medium-chain triglyceride oil derived from coconut, showed a 34% improvement in arterial flexibility. MCT oil works through a mechanism that no other fat can replicate. It's absorbed directly into the bloodstream from the digestive tract and transported to the liver, where it's immediately converted into ketones. Ketones are an alternative fuel source that your heart actually prefers over glucose, especially after age 50 when cardiac glucose metabolism becomes less efficient. When you combine MCT oil with coffee's chlorogenic acids, you create what researchers call a synergistic cardioprotective effect. The chlorogenic acids reduce oxidative stress in the arterial walls, while the ketones from MCT oil provide clean, efficient energy to the heart muscle itself. The dose that showed the best results is 1 tablespoon of MCT oil per cup of coffee. Start with 1 teaspoon if you've never used MCT oil before, because it can cause digestive upset in some people. Gradually increase to 1 tablespoon over 2 weeks. Blend the MCT oil into your coffee using a small frother or blender. Don't just stir it in. Blending creates an emulsion that distributes the fat evenly and prevents that oily film on the surface that most people find unpleasant. Add a pinch of cinnamon, not for flavor but for function. Cinnamon contains compounds that improve insulin sensitivity and reduce post-coffee blood sugar fluctuations that can trigger blood pressure spikes. If you absolutely must have sweetness, use a small amount of raw honey, no more than half a teaspoon. Honey contains flavonoids that actually complement coffee's polyphenols. Never use artificial sweeteners. Sucralose and aspartame have both been linked to increased arterial stiffness in multiple studies. The most effective protocol is 8 ounces of cold brew coffee blended with 1 tablespoon of MCT oil, a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, and if desired, half a teaspoon of raw honey. Consumed between 9 and 11 a.m. 30 minutes after a protein-containing breakfast, with 16 ounces of electrolyte water consumed 30 minutes prior. Many of my patients tell me this modified coffee feels completely different from what they used to drink. No jitters, no heart racing, no blood pressure anxiety, just sustained energy and mental clarity that lasts 4 to 6 hours. We're down to number 1 now. And this is the modification that separates people who maintain healthy blood pressure while drinking coffee into their 80s from those who have to give up coffee entirely in their 60s because their cardiovascular system can't handle it anymore. This next one is technically a compound enhancement strategy, and it controls how your body processes not just caffeine, but every vasoactive substance in coffee, determining whether your arteries stay protected or become progressively more reactive and prone to dangerous spikes. Modification number 1. L-theanine co-administration. A Japanese study of 1,200 adults over 60 found that adding L-theanine to coffee consumption reduced blood pressure reactivity by an astounding 290% compared to coffee alone. 290%. Some participants went from experiencing blood pressure spikes of 25 to 30 points to experiencing increases of only 6 to 8 points with the exact same coffee. This isn't a gradual improvement. This is a complete transformation of how your cardiovascular system responds to coffee. The reason L-theanine is so incredibly powerful is that it works through 3 simultaneous mechanisms. First, it's an amino acid that crosses the blood-brain barrier and increases alpha brainwave activity, creating a state of calm alertness that counteracts caffeine's stimulant effect on your nervous system. Second, it modulates neurotransmitters. Specifically, it increases GABA, the calming neurotransmitter that reduces the fight-or-flight response that caffeine can trigger. This prevents the adrenaline surge that raises heart rate and blood pressure. Third, it directly affects your blood vessels. L-theanine increases nitric oxide production in endothelial cells through a pathway completely independent of coffee's chlorogenic acids. When you combine coffee's polyphenols with L-theanine's nitric oxide boost, you get a doubling of the arterial relaxation effect. Here's the part that no one talks about. After age 60, your body produces 50% less L-theanine from dietary sources compared to when you were younger. Your gut bacteria, which helps synthesize L-theanine from other amino acids, decline dramatically. You're fighting an uphill battle on multiple fronts. Green tea naturally contains L-theanine, which is why some people tolerate green tea better than coffee. But the L-theanine content in green tea is variable, and you'd need to drink 4 to 6 cups to get a therapeutic dose. By that point, you're consuming significant caffeine from the tea itself, defeating the purpose. Supplemental L-theanine bypasses all of this. It goes straight into your bloodstream, crosses into your brain within 30 minutes, and begins modulating your response to caffeine before the coffee even finishes brewing. The dose that showed blood pressure protection in clinical trials is 200 milligrams of L-theanine per 100 milligrams of caffeine. A standard cup of coffee contains roughly 100 milligrams of caffeine, so 200 milligrams of L-theanine is the target. Here's the game-changing protocol. Take 200 milligrams of L-theanine 20 minutes before your coffee. This gives it time to reach peak blood levels before caffeine enters your system. L-theanine is available in capsule or powder form. The powder dissolves in water and absorbs slightly faster. Mix 200 milligrams in 4 ounces of water, add a squeeze of lemon for taste, and drink it as part of your pre-coffee hydration routine. Within 2 weeks of starting this protocol, most people notice their coffee feels completely different. The jittery, anxious energy is gone. The heart-pounding sensation disappears. Blood pressure measurements taken 60 and 90 minutes after coffee show minimal elevation, often just 3 to 5 points instead of the 15 to 25-point spikes they used to experience. By 6 weeks, arterial stiffness measurements, if you have access to advanced testing, show significant improvement. Your blood vessels are more responsive, more flexible, better able to handle the normal fluctuations of daily life. I had a patient, Margaret, 67 years old, who came to me after her cardiologist told her she needed to quit coffee entirely because her blood pressure was spiking to 165/95 every morning after her usual cup. She was devastated. Coffee wasn't just a beverage for her. It was part of her morning ritual, her quiet time, her mental preparation for the day. I introduced her to this complete protocol. Cold brew instead of hot. Timing delayed to 90 minutes after waking. Protein beforehand. Hydration with electrolytes. MCT oil instead of cream. And 200 milligrams of L-theanine 20 minutes before her coffee. Within 3 weeks, her post-coffee blood pressure readings had dropped to 128/82. Within 3 months, her overall blood pressure control had improved so much that her cardiologist reduced one of her medications. She told me at her 6-month follow-up, "I spent a year thinking I had to choose between coffee and my heart. Now I understand they were never enemies. I was just drinking it wrong." Now, here's my challenge to you. Pick one modification from this list and commit to it for 30 days. Not all 5 at once, just one. Start with timing if you're currently drinking coffee first thing in the morning. Move it to 90 minutes after waking and notice what changes. Or start with hydration. Drink 16 ounces of water 30 minutes before your coffee every day for a month, then pay attention to how your body responds. Then come back to this video and leave a comment telling me what you experienced. I read every single one, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to take action. Your heart has carried you through decades of life. It deserves better than being told to give up something you love because of incomplete information. These 5 modifications, especially that number 1 L-theanine protocol, give you exactly what you need to keep enjoying coffee while protecting your cardiovascular system. Don't wait until your doctor tells you coffee is completely off limits. Start today. If you found this information valuable, make sure you're subscribed because next week I'm covering the 3 breakfast foods that are secretly spiking blood pressure in people over 50. And I guarantee at least one of them is on your table right now. I'm Dr. Nathan Brooks, and I'll see you in the next one.